Hello, this is Lisa, and this is Unexplained America. And today's episode is covering the Skirvin Hilton Hotel in Oklahoma City. So, first, please make sure to find me on all the social medias, platforms, review, follow, leave me a comment, please. Reach out to me with whatever you got. So, we'll get started. So, this episode really comes about because I did take an impromptu trip to Oklahoma City at the beginning of March to see a bestie named Lindsay. So, I knew I was going to stay in a hotel. I like to stay in a nice hotel, but I did Google to see if there was like a haunted place to stay, just because that's what I do wherever I go. I want a backstory, preferably with a nice hotel and room service. But anyway, that's a different subject. And I didn't even get room service, by the way, but I did Google. And so the Skirvin came up downtown Oklahoma City, kind of very close to where I wanted to be. And it was like 4 stars, kind of a little bit, probably more expensive than I was going to do, but it was very, very nice and definitely worth it. So, and it looked amazing. So it had the hauntedness there and it looked amazing. So this is how it all began for me. So to start off with, the Skirvin, it's beautiful, expansive, haunted. There were reportedly ball teams that would not stay at the hotel. That was what I understood. And then when I got there were people like the workers, the hotel people, they were like, yeah, people that fly, like pilots and crew that fly all the time that stay here, like they will see a figure sit on the edge of your bed during, the stay. And there's like an actual indention in the comforter. Like, yeah. And in this episode, I will share my own experience with you later on. But we're going to start at the beginning of the Skirvin, and it really starts with Mr. Skirvin himself, the namesake and founder who had the Skirvin built. So, William Balser Skirvin went by Bill, so I'm going to call him Bill throughout this, but he was born November 10th, 1860, near Sturgis, Michigan. Now, this is 1860. Really, Sturgis, as far as a city, did not really exist. It was just kind of like a territory, community, or whatever. It wouldn't even be considered a quote-unquote city until 1896. So, this is going back a bit, guys. Seems weird. So weird. So, Bill was born 6 months before the Civil War began. That's really weird to think about as well. And his father, it looked like his whole family was kind of into farming. His father was listed as a farmer. As far as census records, it looked like looked like the family was what they would call homesteaders that came in from the east. And now his mom, I will say, it looks like his mother passes away when Bill is really young, like when he's just 7 or 8. And then he and his sister, so he does have a younger sister, they go to live with his paternal grandmother. Her name was Maria. Some sources, it looks like was Mariah, but it says Maria. Anyway, we're going to say Maria Skirvin. So, not sure why him and his sister went to live with his mom. There's not a lot known about Bill's early life. Not sure if his dad just couldn't or didn't feel up to raising him and his sister because of work or grief or whatever it is, but it does look like his dad remains close to them in the state, and we'll kind of bring this up. They it's not like they never see each other again. They do, but during some time period, him and his sister, after his mom dies, moves in with his grandmother. So now his father will go on to remarry by the time Bill is about 15, and his father will have 2 more children with like his new wife. Just a little background there. And again, not a lot written or documented on young Bill. I mean, this is the 1860s of it all. But by the age of 26, he is living in Kansas and he is married. And his wife's name is Harriet Elizabeth Reed Skirvin. She'll be known as Hattie. So if I mention her, she's Hattie. Now, she was born, looks like she was born and kind of raised in Kansas. I guess they met in Kansas, and she was 3 years younger than him. So, yeah. So he was 26 at this time in Kansas, 23 for her, and they have one daughter who is 2, and her name is Pearl. And this is listed in census in that year, and it shows that Bill is listed as a farmer. He's a landowner, and this would have been around 1886 or so. Now, in April of 1889, the U.S. government has issued what's called the Oklahoma Land Act of 1889. And this is basically where the government had 2 million acres of land kind of quote unquote deeded to them. We won't get into the whys or how of all that, but this land had originally been part of like the Louisiana Purchase. It looks like some tribes had deeded over the land to the government. And so the government had the surplus of land, 2 million acres out there in kind of like western Oklahoma. And they wanted these to be settled. Like they really want people to go out and settle. And that's really how Bill's family at first even got to, like they were in Michigan there. So they had kind of like, it looks like his family had kind of moved originally from like the East Coast, like the New York area, and then they had these land deals out in Ohio and out in Michigan, and that's how these people would get to be landowners, basically. So, long story short, 2 million acres of land needs to be settled. So, on April 22nd of 1889, at high noon, there were like 50,000 men lined up to take their portion, or try to, of this 2 million acres. Now, each person could settle for a small filing fee. This is all they have to pay. And they get this deed to this land, but you get 160 acres per person. So that's exactly what Bill did. That's what he was after. And if you take 2 million acres and divide that by 160, you get 12,500 people. So only 12,500 of the 50,000 people were going to get a piece of this land. So I'm sure this was a very aggressive adventure, I imagine. So Bill, I'm sure they're riding horses. They're staking out their land. So anyway, he gets a piece of land. So he gets 160 acres. And then he doesn't actually move to Oklahoma. He doesn't move his family to Oklahoma. It said he does have a partner. And they kind of they acquire this land through the government's Homestead Act there. But then they're kind of starting to buy and sell land around what's called Guthrie, Oklahoma. And that is a city now, but basically Guthrie kind of came about because of this whole 1889, and they're called the 89ers. He was like an original 89er, but this Land Settlement Act. So, yes. So basically it was born out of that whole land rush. So this gained them some revenue. Of course, they were, this was a very nice area. And so Bill, while he was really still residing in Michigan. His family was in Michigan. However, he does eventually move his family to Galveston, Texas, to acquire land there. And he's buying and selling. He's amassing a fortune, it says, while he's in Texas. And this is buying and selling land, buying and selling properties, and it said that he becomes a millionaire. And it said that he is also in Galveston in what is to be what's called it's in 1900, like the year 1900. That sounds so weird. Like even when the great hurricane and then flood happened, and it was a Category 4 hurricane, it hit and devastated Galveston. So the hurricane was up to 130 miles per hour winds. It had a storm surge of like 15 feet, and around 8,000 people lost their lives in this hurricane. And the whole area of Galveston was just devastated. So it was said that Bill was there during this time. It doesn't say anything, obviously he lived through it and he was fine. But all I know is that he was buying, selling properties. He was becoming very rich during this time, and maybe he even made a lot of money with this devastation out there. I don't know. Now, it says he was there during this time, but his family was not. In the 1900 census, it actually reflects that Hattie along with Pearl, who's now 18. And now, so they had 2 more children. Hattie and Bill had 3 total children, but they have Marguerite, who is at that time 7. And then they have, his name is Orrin William. He will go by, I think he'll go by William for the most part. But they call him Junior, but he was really not a junior because he had a totally different name. But he was like 3. So they are all living actually with James, who is Bill's dad, out in Michigan. So it's not clear why, who, how, if it was just like a moment in time, but that's where the family was. And there's no mention of where Bill is in census, at least. So he's probably down in Galveston working and going back and forth. So he's kind of traveling during that time. So he does move the family full time to Galveston. I know for sure in the 1906, but even before then. So they do come down there and meet him. And just a little tidbit, when you search Bill during this time, like I did in Texas, his name popped up a lot in the newspapers with lawsuits. And it was all related to land deeds and notes. So he was wheeling and dealing, but he may not have been wheeling and dealing in the most of legal ways. At least he made a lot of people angry and they filed lawsuits against him. So I never saw any resolutions, but there were several. And and I will say, so there was kind of 2 points. If his name was mentioned, it was either related to purchasing land, leasing land, or a lawsuit. Yes. By 1906, Bill moves the family to Oklahoma City, and they moved into a home downtown on 11th Street. And while in Oklahoma, they're already quite wealthy. Bill is quite wealthy, but evidently he begins dabbling in the oil business as well. And he makes a lot of friends and makes a lot of money wheeling and dealing in oil. So a couple of years of living in Oklahoma, Hattie gets sick, and she does pass away in their home. It says about 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. It was actually a Friday the 13th of 1908. So, and she passes away with pneumonia, and she is only 45 years old, by the way. That's so sad. So the family, of course, is in mourning. Their mother's passed away. But Bill, evidently, the way he dealt with everything was business, business, business. And so you can tell he was always buying, selling, doing. And so he began to work on something new. So work would keep him preoccupied, I guess. So Bill owned a lot of property in Oklahoma City, and he owned 4 lots in downtown Oklahoma City on the corner of First Street and Broadway. And it said in 1909 that the son of a New York financier named Colonel Ned Green, his mother, Mrs. Hetty Green, was kind of the rich part of the situation. But she had sent her son, Colonel Ned Green, down to talk to Bill about purchasing those 4 lots in downtown Oklahoma City. She wanted to build a luxury hotel. Well, it said that Bill is a very competitive person, and I think he's very smart, and he knew that Hetty was very smart. And so he said that if that's what she was doing or wanting to do, that sounded like a good idea to him. So he decided to keep the lots. He would not sell, and he would build himself the grandest hotel in Oklahoma ever. So as you can see, Bill, I mean, he was busy. He was a businessman, and he liked to go big or go home, I guess. So Bill wanted everything in the hotel to be the finest, and he immediately hired his friend. His name was Solomon Andrew Layton, and he was just a very prominent Oklahoman architect. He had built a vast portfolio of over 100 public buildings that he had been a part of. He had done the Oklahoma State Capitol. He had done several buildings downtown and at the University of Oklahoma campus. So he was just very prominent, and they were big friends. And so at first they began to plan for a 6-story hotel, which after some thought, they decided the hotel needed to be bigger than that, than 6 stories. And we'll kind of get into this, I think, a little bit later. But I mean, Oklahoma, back then, it was not, and really the town, I mean, nothing against Oklahoma City as far as like a downtown, but it's definitely not like a tall skyscrapery situation. So, I mean, there are tall buildings, but it's, it's not like a Chicago, New York. It's just not. So then it was very much not. I mean, it was like, and it was surrounded by flatlands, had the oil going, cattle, like it was pretty rural. So we'll kind of talk about this. But anyway, so they begin talking. So they get to work, and by September of 1911, the Skirvin Hotel opens its doors. And the hotel at that time in 1911 was comprised of 2 10-story towers containing 224 rooms with their own private baths. I mean, this is 1911. That was huge. This place would have been like gorgeous, of course, and it's gorgeous now, but like this would have been a big to-do. And the Skirvin did boast 2 electric elevators. It had convention rooms, a tea room, a restaurant. Yes, I mean, the ads that were running in the papers in 1911, I'll try to post these, it's interesting, state the interior is in an English Gothic style. It's luxurious hotel, but yet warm and homey. It says the kitchen, and this is from the ad, the kitchen facilities boast being the most modern and clean, with everything being white. The linens, dishes, even the silverware were white. And it said, on top of it all, every evening, a Professor Chalesky conducted a 9-piece orchestra for the guest. Like, wow. Like every evening as part of this just, I don't know, it's just whole ambiance. It sounds amazing. This was the ad that was running. So, yeah. They also boast of everything that was like related to the building materials and in the furnishings. They boasted that everything was ordered local. Like they didn't go out to St. Louis or Chicago for any of the building and furnishings items, materials. And it said that Bill, in order to capitalize on all fronts, not just in the hotel, but he's involved in everything. So it said that he wanted the Skirvin Hotel to be very self-sufficient. So he would purchase his own gas and water pipelines. He purchased an electric plant to run the hotel. And then he purchased like a laundry service. Like he didn't want to send out any of his stuff for laundry. So he went ahead and like they basically did that as a business, and they would actually do laundry for other places, other businesses. So the only thing he never owned that supported the Skirvin was the phone company. Like everything else he owned. Like that was his thing. Like he wanted it to be self-sufficient. Like in him owned. So interesting. So upon completion of the hotel, so Bill himself decides to move in to the hotel, and he's gonna, his kids are with him. So he sells his house on 11th Street and he moves into a 5-room suite on the 9th floor of the hotel. Now, Pearl and Marguerite, they loved this whole idea of living in a hotel. Like Pearl was still at home. She was literally like in her late 20s. Marguerite was 18 and William was 15. So the girls loved it. They loved the thought of it. They were like, oh yes. Now, William evidently loved the outdoors. Like he loved being outdoors. He loved animals. Like he was an outdoorsman. He had 11 dogs, 2 raccoons, a monkey, an owl, and a horse. So Bill wanted like 0.0 animals in his hotel. Now, there was a rigid no pets policy. I mean, this was a brand new place too, so I get it. However, for his kids, he did make exceptions because they lived there, and evidently Marguerite had 2 dogs. She had a poodle and a Russian wolfhound, and they lived in the actual suite. Like, they lived with her. Evidently, Bill trusted these animals, and she'd had them a long time. So he let William build cages and dog houses on the roof of the hotel for his animals. Now, Not all 11 dogs. I think he had to rehome like 6 of his dogs, and his horse went to live with a family friend who had a farm. But still, he had 5 dogs, the monkey, the owl, and 2 raccoons, all like on the roof. Yes. It's kind of funny to think about. So, and evidently there were some issues with this that would pop up. Like one time, one of his raccoons got out of its pen and they had to, catch it, and the guests were, just freaking out about that. And then one time, there was like a situation where guests were awakened by the dogs barking and they would complain. And Bill wasn't really, I mean, he lived there, he was an owner, like he was just kind of like, with guests, who's kind of like, okay, well, if you don't like it, just leave. Like that was kind of his mentality. I don't think he really cared. But like one night, evidently, some guests called, down to the desk, and they were like, it sounds like a wolf howling, like an actual wolf, not just a dog. So the hotel, concierge woke up Bill to let him know. And then Bill was like, what? Like, what? A wolf? So then he actually hears it himself. And then come to find out, William had actually snuck in 3 wolves that he had evidently caught when, like, he trapped them. Like, I guess he went hunting, he trapped them. He brought them to the hotel. He brought wolves to the hotel. 3 of them. Yes. So this was what was going on. It's just funny. I don't know. It's funny to me. So we mentioned about Bill and the pet situation. However, it is said there is a story about a wealthy family named the Hutchinsons that were friends of Bill's. They would come to the hotel. They had a lot of money and they were friends. So evidently they brought their fully grown pet lion with them. Like lion. I said lion. They acquired this pet evidently when they went, like it was just a baby. They went on a hunt in Africa, raised the lion, brought it home, raised this lion as their own. It was domesticated, I guess, very much so, blah, blah. Well, Bill, being evidently 1,000% unpredictable, allowed them to actually keep the lion with them in the hotel because it was too big to board. So normally he would require that his guests go board their dogs or whatever. Well, they weren't going to get a boarder to take the lion. So he told them to keep the lion in the bathroom. Now, later on, it said when they were at dinner, a house cleaner went up to the room to drop some, fresh towels off to the bathroom. And once she entered the bathroom and encountered the lion, she screamed, of course, and ran out. The lion chased her, thinking she was playing, because he's evidently real playful and domesticated. So the lion chased her all over the floor. The whole hotel was in like an uproar, and they had to get the Hutchinsons there. They finally got control of the lion, and the house cleaners were finally calmed down. And Bill, he thought this was hilarious. Like evidently he really had a good sense of humor, and there will be other things that pop up, but he enjoyed this. And he also loved this incident because then it caused a huge to do, and it was publicity. It was fun publicity for his hotel. So he enjoyed this immensely, and I can appreciate that too. I'll tell you, I don't care if this lion is domesticated or not. No way. No lion. So Bill, yeah, he used this whole thing for publicity. Likewise, at the time of building, the hotel sat across from the alley from the Rock Island Railroad that led to it. So Bill felt like this was amazing because he thought, okay, these railroad passengers would just get off the train and come straight to the hotel. Well, then he noticed a lot of the guests just arrived by car. Not many people came from the train to the hotel. And the train ended up being so close to the hotel that there was an enormous amount of noise. Yes. And in particular, there was a banquet room called the Green Room. And it, on many occasions, like it hosted a lot of things, but it would have like a dinner speaker. And the speaker had to deal with the rattling and banging of like freight trains coming through. And the speaker would literally have to wait about 10 minutes for the train to pass before they could speak. So Bill ended up renaming the room the Rock Island Room and placed like this sign spelling that out like in electric over the door. And the room actually became quite popular and just showed his sense of humor with this situation. People were, they would laugh about the situation with the railroad noise and such. Anyway, he made it fun instead of like a big to do. It's like he just rolled with it. So obviously, Bill lived in the hotel, so the hotel was his home, his office, his whole world. Evidently, he would hang out in the lobby with his friends, his buddies. He just would be there all the time. So the staff kind of knew he was there, and of course they could really communicate with him just by a signaling of his hand. Like he would signal them and they knew what that meant. So sometimes if like a guest came in that he didn't like or whatever, he would just no. And then sometimes he would have like a way for a discount if it was one of his like oil filled friends would come in. And sometimes he would even comp them a room, but he would just wait. Like he was just right there with the where they checked in, so he could just wave. He could just take care of that. So in 1911, Oklahoma City, like I said, was very much a frontier town. And it's hard to imagine. People are driving. There's trains, but there's still I'm sure there's like a lot of horse activity somewhat still. The hundreds of miles to the west of Oklahoma City was nothing but ranch country. So the hotel actually had a very eclectic clientele. They had everything from the posh millionaires coming in. They had tribal chiefs coming and going doing business. You evidently had an infamous train robber named Al Jennings coming through, and he tried to run for governor during this time. And yeah, he used the hotel as kind of like a little launching point. But basically, it was just really interesting. You had a lot of different types of people. And it is said, so of course you had a lot of cattlemen. And so at that time, Bill had all of the like furniture in the lobby covered in cowhide, took as kind of like a nod to them. And then also in the lobby, like it was all tile, and we'll kind of get into this a little bit, but it was like tiled lobby. And a lot of these men, these cattlemen or the oilmen, you had a lot of oil field people. They wore boots. They wore lace up boots. They were muddy and oily, and so they put 0 rugs in the lobby. They're just going to get demolished. So 0 rugs went in the lobby. And this lobby is, oh goodness, we'll get into all this, but it is just beautiful, by the way. So in 1913, the Skirvin is thriving. Okay, it's been open for 2 years. It's a hotel like no other. It is something very special to Oklahoma City. It's like a big deal to them. So the Skirvin, since it had opened, had actually been managed. The general manager was a young man named Frederick, and I'm going to maybe say this wrong, Schrubel. I'm going to say Schrubel. So Schrubel was in his early 30s. He had actually studied at Arkansas State University in Arkansas and had traveled to Europe. He had traveled to Europe to learn the hotel business. He was exceptionally trained. He had tons of past experience. Like he had been running a hotel at the time that Bill got him. So he was very, very good. And evidently, now this is 1913. So on April 17th, of 1913, the stockholders of the Skirvin, which of course included Bill and such, and just a few, it was like the directors, evidently they were getting together. This was kind of a big to-do. So the directors had actually questioned Schrubel about money. Okay, so this was a big meeting. They had not really had a financial meeting or any type of big to-do meeting since they had opened. So the directors were basically wanting to audit the accounts, looking at everything. And evidently Schrubel had requested all the account information from the hotel's bookkeeper. Now it said that he picked up these papers by 3, and then he had gone to the meeting, gone out of the meeting, and he lived in some suites. Like, he had a suite on the ninth floor as well as Bill. So evidently, he lived there, Bill lived there, whatever. At 5:45 p.m., it said that the house physician and doctor comes and finds Struble lying in his bathroom in his rooms on the ninth floor with a gunshot wound to the head. Now, what is presenting? It's presenting to them all as suicide, kind of right away. And many people are questioning this, of course, outside of this. And then even the coroner is questioning things because that kind of everybody's abuzz. Like, this general manager, Struble, was very popular, very well known. Bill was very well known. I mean, everything is out there. And it's kind of like the newspaper at that time. I think I've talked about this. It's like a mini Facebook. Like, it comes out every day. It talks about like the coming and going of people. Like, it's kind of like a society thing, or basically, hey, Bill went to visit some of his friends or was having a party. Like, everybody's business, especially if they were well known or a businessman, was in the newspaper. So very popular, very well known, Struble was. So yeah. So evidently it came to, like, there is a coroner's jury investigating the death, okay, right away. And evidently Frederick had some issues with his adenoids. So at first they're like, oh, well, he just, he hasn't been able to breathe. He hasn't been able to sleep. It's got to be his adenoids. He's just so distraught about his adenoids, and not being able to sleep and just his health troubles. So this is what the theory was presented kind of at first. Now, a Dr. T.A. Buchanan, he stated in the newspaper, like, in the media are all over this. I mean, this is like, if going on a little trip is news in those days, like a suicide, like a possible murder or any type of coroner's inquest was huge. So Buchanan states, quote unquote, men don't commit suicide because of adenoids. So I think that immediately kind of was like, that's ridiculous. That's why they were diving into this. So evidently the word on the street, or I should say the hotel, was talking about murder, the possibility of such, what really happened. It's, this is what was going on. So this is what they were looking into, and evidently people were saying that possibly the assistant manager, whose name was Morris Brown, was a part of this. Evidently it was said that he found Frederick, which was actually not true. I will say this. So evidently the gun used in the suicide was Morris's gun. And this was weird. So evidently, like, Morris wasn't really, and the bookkeeper said Morris wasn't on the payroll, but he was considered the assistant manager. He had all the duties of assistant manager. He just wasn't on the payroll. And he did have an office. Like, they had the bookkeeper, Morris, Struble, they all had offices. And evidently Morris had left his gun in the office, and the bookkeeper had seen it that morning, but then by noon she didn't see it. So they did feel like Struble had picked up the gun later on in the afternoon, and they felt like it was like 3:00 when they had picked up the other stuff. So, and evidently, and further, okay, so this is all very strange about the whole payroll and Morris, the gun. So I think this is why a lot of people were questioning the whole thing. Now, furthermore, people also stated that Morris evidently was running a casino on one of the floors of the hotel and allegedly had told people Frederick owed him $10,000. Yeah. So people were chatting about all this. So it sounded like, they were thinking Morris did it because of the money or because of, I don't know, but people were talking. However, on the 21st of April, so there's several, so that happened on the 17th. By the 21st, like, Bill actually puts in his testimony to the inquest because they're having testimony. They're having everybody come in and testify. So he states that initially he and the stockholders wanted to shield Frederick's family embarrassment. Like, he has a wife. They'd only been married like a couple of years. And he didn't want to, like, kind of outright say what was going on in that meeting that day. But But here's the deal. So evidently, again, this was the first financial meeting since the hotel opened, and everybody was looking at the true financials. And evidently, Frederick had purchased some stock in the hotel, but he hadn't paid for it. But he had told the stockholders he had paid. And so what he was having to produce, like the stockholders were like, if you did pay for your stock, you need to bring us the evidence that you paid, the vouchers. When he never returned from going after the vouchers, that's when they all went to his apartment to look and found him dead of the shotgun wound to the head. And turned out, on further inspection, after the fact, he truly had not paid for that stock. Evidently, I don't know if it was gambling. It's never determined what happened, but, the deal is they felt like because of this, Bill told the Inquisition that him not paying for the stock, would not have been, a horrendous thing for Frederick, but I guess that he was super worried about it and super sensitive about it and just took matters into his own hands, because Bill was like, we would just reduce the numbers and kind of show the actual figures, and of course pull any ownership from Frederick. I mean, he didn't pay for it. I mean, there would have been repercussions, but it wasn't the end of the world. So with this information now on the 21st, everybody's like, oh, okay, the Inquisition ends. They feel like he indeed did commit suicide. Morris wasn't around and in the hotel. They looked into all that. So the coroner and everybody felt convinced now that it was suicide. Everything had presented itself that way to begin with. But anyway, so what's interesting to me, and I'll kind of get into this. So the hotel gives you a very and I asked for it because I talked to the hotel, but they give you an account of the history, and then they post, and they have things posted online. 0.00 is this mentioned in any of the literature given by the hotel or presented online. I mean, you would think that this would be something, and I had to just come upon this in the newspapers. So thank you, newspapers.com. So, because this was not presented anywhere. So there is certainly a death, and I'll kind of get into that. And this would have been on the 9th floor. So I'll get into that as well. So thank you, newspapers, blah, blah. I didn't know at the time any of this, okay? And I had actually requested to stay on the 10th floor because that's the floor, and we'll get into that per the internet, because I did Google before I even got there, and it said you need to stay on the 10th floor. That's where the activity is. So I was actually put on the 9th floor, and I had no clue about any of this. So I'm finding out in hindsight, way after the fact, which is hilarious to me now. So just FYI. But yeah, that story was not presented in any of the paperwork that I was given about the history from the hotel itself. And they gave an extensive history, by the way. So that to me was a little interesting. So now, okay, so that happened in 1913. So in 1917, Bill's oldest daughter, Pearl, she's now 35. So this is 1917. I don't know if she would have been considered an old maid. I hate that term, but 35 is definitely not old, but in 1917, that would have been definitely of age. Because she came from money, I don't know if that was even looked at the same way. I don't know. But she does finally marry a man named George Mesta, and he is evidently the founder of Pittsburgh's Mesta Machine Company. And a little side note, so he's very wealthy, okay, on his own. He gets called in to Washington, D.C., in World War I, evidently, and he helps in the defense. They want him on council for defense. So she actually moves with him to Washington, D.C. And he lived in Pittsburgh, but he had actually lived in New York too. So his company was in Pittsburgh, though. He was traveling. He was a businessman. But anyway, he actually passed away in 1925. So they weren't married that long, but she stayed on and became very connected in Washington, D.C. she was noted as the hostess with the mostest. And of course, her name is messed up, but her last name. So she would evidently throw these amazing parties and fundraisers, and everyone just enjoyed that. She also allegedly had like an affair with a vice president at the time. But anyway, she she stayed on there in Washington. She lived there. So evidently she had inherited like $15 million from George's passing away in 1925. And, anyway, and evidently he had been big in the Republican Party, and that's who she was like throwing fundraisers for. But eventually she would actually be made an ambassador to Luxembourg under President Truman. And she lived, just a side note, to be 92 years old. So she lived a very big life and a very full life. Like she could be her own, a different type of episode, but she had a lot going on. So in 1920, Marguerite gets married, and she actually married a Robert Adam to begin with. She has kids with him. Now, he passes away in 1938, and she would remarry and end up in Washington, D.C. as well. And she would actually live with Pearl and be her right hand in all she did, like all the party functions, all the society things. Like Marguerite was with Pearl. Evidently, they were very close. They weren't that close in age, but they were very close. And so Marguerite would always be with her sister. Additionally, in the 1920s, so I did find an article in the paper that reflected that Bill was sued for tax dodging. So remember all of his old ways in Texas. He had a lot of trouble legally. Evidently, he had a bit of issues, legal issues in Oklahoma as well. But I will say, for the most part, when his name came up in the newspaper, it was all about social situations, parties, the hotel, things like that. It was hardly related to being sued like it was in Texas. So, but yet he still had some issues. And I think that goes when your hand is dipped in that many places. So, who knows? Anyway, so in 1928, Bill began working on an expansion of the hotel. So it's been a little bit. They wanted to do some remodeling, and he wanted to expand it. So he added more floors, making the towers, instead of 10, he now made them 14, quote unquote. Now, a little side note, and I don't know if they still do this in buildings when they build them today, but if you'll notice, most buildings, especially older buildings, they do not have a 13th floor. It goes from 12 to 14. So, yeah. And 13, the number 13 was it was like a superstitious deal. It was just considered unlucky. People they just did not want it. So the actual 13th floor of the building was assigned to 14. So really they just added 3 more floors. But in that expansion, they did, like on the top of the building, they did add this beautiful Venetian room. So it's listed as being on the 14th floor, and it's still there today. It's in use today. It is absolutely gorgeous. And yeah, we'll talk about that. But they also, at this time and around this time, they added another tower as well. So they went from 2 10-story towers. Well, now they had 3 14-story towers in all. And it's expansive. So in the 1930s, Bill, along with his kids, thought actually about selling the hotel to the Hilton family. Now, evidently, they went to see the Hiltons in Texas. They had a meeting, and then Bill changed his mind about selling. And instead of selling and getting out of the hotel business, he wanted to do more. So he actually owns some property across from the Skirvin. So he gets an idea of his head that he wants to build a huge tower. Like he wants to have a building in downtown Oklahoma City that has the most floors. So he wants to build a large 26-floor tower across from the Skirvin. Yes. Well, this tower would cause him legal issues with his family. So he begins working on the idea of this tower, and he works again with his friend, it was Solomon that had helped him before. So they get like 6 floors built, And this kind of started early 30s. So this probably would have been around 32, 33 that they got 6 floors built. Well, the Depression finally hit Oklahoma. So financially, things weren't as great as they were before. And his kids found out that he had allegedly taken their shares of the hotels that they were given, and he was cashing them in to pay for his tower. Yes. So by 1938, like, Pearl decides to take him to court, and she basically wanted him to be removed as far as managing abilities. Like, she wanted the ability taken away from Bill, and she wanted to take over with the managing of the family business. Yeah. Additionally, at the same time in 1938, the towers are finished, but it is hardly 26 floors. It ends up only being 16 floors instead of 26 floors. And the purpose of this was to have like luxury apartments in them. It is said that in 1974, later on, there was a very massive remodel that made the building into like an office building with tons of windows and glass, like the very commercial looking, just typical office building downtown. And it is presently 101 Park Avenue. So it is still standing today, but he did have that built, and he really wanted it to be a lot taller. But that's not what happened. So he basically got this big idea, and it caused him a lot of issues with his kiddos, and it was just a lot more expensive, and just came at a bad time, basically, with the whole Great Depression and recovering from that. So fast forward, so that was 1938. Now it's March 17th of 1944. Bill is 83, and he is riding around downtown in a friend's car when they were made to go off the road. I guess something happened. They were made to go off the road, and they have an accident. Bill collides like with the front windshield. So I guess I don't know if, I'm sure there were seat belts. They probably weren't worn, or it's just different then. But he suffers a lot of injuries and broken bones. He's 83, by the way. So he goes into the hospital on the 17th about. So he does contract pneumonia, and he does ultimately die in the hospital on March 25th of 1944. Now, it is said that all 3 of his kids came to the hospital. They reconciled. He told them how much he loved them, and that he didn't really care about the business, and that they were all he had. And kind of incidentally, the legal battle was actually over maybe a day or so before he died, and the courts were going to actually let him continue running the businesses. So Pearl didn't even win, and then he passed. So anyway, so with the death of Bill, the family inherits the hotel, but then they quickly sell the hotel to a Dan James. And this happens in 1945. So within a year, the Skirvins no longer own it. They just, they kind of disengage the business. They sell the hotel. They get out of it, basically. And so in this era after, so you had World War II going on. And that really helped the economy. The war really helped the economy. So during this time, so under Dan James, the hotel is very successful. It has a golden era, so to speak. So many presidents stay at the hotel, like Richard Nixon eventually. Tons of celebrities. It said that Elvis stayed there, Bob Hope, tons of celebrities stay there throughout the years. Now, this goes on till about 1963 or so, and then it said the hotel sells to a syndicate hotel company out of Chicago, and they purchase it. Then between this time, so the hotel bounces around ownership from other places, other hotel companies purchase it until 1987, and then the hotel is closed due to bankruptcy. Now, I will say in 1979, the hotel had been added to the National Historic Registry. So it is not clear at all if the hotel just stayed empty or not, but in 2002, the Oklahoma City Council purchases the hotel, and they get together with Marcus Hotels and Resorts under the Hilton brand. So the Hiltons finally get the Skirvin after so many years. So the hotel goes under a huge renovation project, and I'm sure it was this building is beautiful and it's historic. I mean, it was a huge undertaking. They spent $56 million on this rehabilitation of this place. But in February of 2007, the hotel is opened back up as the Skirvin, refurbished and kind of brought back to its former glory, or at least as close as possible. So in the renovation, and I'm sure because it's on the historic registry, they tried to keep a lot of the aspects of the original Skirvin still. It said that the elevator doors are original. Now, I don't know what that means. It says that, like, elevator doors are original, but then it says the Art Deco covers you see were added in the late 1920s. So still, what you're looking at is old. I mean, it's over 100 years old. But, I mean, if you're inside the elevator, like, it looks like just a metal, normal elevator. Like, there's nothing weird or creepy or 1911 about it. So, I really don't understand the original door, so to speak. But definitely the outside covers of the doors, maybe it's like the outside doors, are original. And they are fantastic. I mean, absolutely awesome. So, interesting there. But I mean, as far as functioning, it functions like an elevator of any other hotel situation. Nothing scary, okay, guys? So the red tile in the lobby is original, and back then, I guess it had gone up the walls. Now, it doesn't go up the walls now, but it is like there's red tile in the lobby. It's original. There is marble in the stairwells that was added in the 1920s. All of that is original, and it's all gorgeous. So when you walk into the hotel lobby, it's just amazing. It's beautiful. It looks old, but yet it looks like new. So it's like old new. So there are chandeliers, glass mosaics, like there's dark wood and trim everywhere. The hotel lobby desk, actually, they use parts of the original front desk that they refurbished and blended with new oak trim and then a granite countertop. So all of that it's just absolutely beautiful. The work that they did was really good. So there are intricate woodworkings in all of the trim in the main parts of the hotel, like really creepy faces and such in the trims. And I did post this before and I'll post it again, but it looked like little devil faces, honestly. And yeah, so it was on purpose. So the point of it was supposed to be what's called Bacchus heads. I think I'm saying that right. So a Bacchus was the god of wine and intoxication. So this was evidently another Bill Skirvin being funny, because at the time that the Skirvin is built, Oklahoma is a state-imposed prohibition. So that meant that they did not legally have alcohol, okay? It was like a state thing. So he thought, and he really enjoyed alcohol, so he thought he'd be funny and have these Bacchus heads everywhere, like inside. So, isn't that interesting? I don't know. So, yeah, truly creepy. Whatever the point was maybe funny, but it comes off as truly creepy now. Now, there is a lot of red. There's like red, I'm trying to think, it's like red wallpaper like everywhere, but there is a lot of red utilized in the refinishing and everything in the finished work. So that goes back to the original Skirvin. Evidently, Pearl loved red, and she was instrumental with the design of the hotel to begin with. There is a red piano lounge set, and it has a red grand piano. I did not see that, and I will say, we'll kind of get into this. The hotel was under construction when I went, like the lobby parts of it were kind of just parts. It wasn't all of it. Were kind of like sectioned off and such. So I did not see that, but a lot of red. So the 14th floor is amazing, and it's original to the addition that was done in the 1928 time frame. So, late 20s. But there's parquet flooring, original English walnut wood. It's just beautiful. The windows are amazing. The view of the city's amazing. So, yeah, if you stay at the Skirvin, you have to go to the 14th floor and look around. It's just absolutely amazing. So, now we're going to get into my visit, my experience, and the hauntings. So, when I pulled up to the hotel, of course, it's very impressive. I mean, it's huge. It's just huge. And it's got like this whole neo-Gothic looking huge structure, and it's large and just it's beautiful. I mean, it's just, and you can tell like it's old, but it's just beautiful and it's in great condition. So immediately I pull in, they do have valet parking that you do. So I'm talking to the valet attendant and I'm asking him for, his haunted stories if he has any. So he tells me right away that people do experience figures that sit on the edge of their beds. Like, actually, like I said before, they cause an indention. And so you can like see where they would be sitting, these ghost spirits. And this was mainly, he said, like crew, people, pilots, flight attendants that would come through and stay at the hotel. They would discuss this happening to them. He also mentioned that there were like NBA players that would come into town that wouldn't stay at the Skirvin. And I kind of like, I didn't even remember that about the Oklahoma City Thunder. So they do have an NBA team. That wasn't on my radar. So I was like, okay, that's weird. But, basketball players, kind of similar to baseball players, superstitious. I get it, whatever. So I dismissed this. I was like, okay, whatever. So then I walk into the lobby and I'm a little sad right away because that first day it was very much under construction in the lobby. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like they were doing a lot of work that day in the lobby. So things were like sectioned down even more that day than they were because I was there 3 days, 2 nights. So yeah, so I was a little bit sad because I'm like, oh, but what I could see of the lobby was absolutely gorgeous. The dark wood, the tiled floors, like everything looked super nice, super luxurious, but old. Like it did look old, but nice, like nice. So lots of woodwork. I love a lot of trim. I mean, it was obviously really nice. The other thing I noticed, there's a restaurant because I'm a foodie and I'm like, oh, there's a restaurant right there. And I was actually really hungry. I didn't get anything from the restaurant, but I waited. So the restaurant was actually added in renovations in 1930. Just a little side note, but it was very pretty restaurant. So now I have already Googled, like I said, and in my Googling, I had heard a story of Effie, which I'll get into. But I Googled which was the most haunted floor, and it said that you need to stay on the 10th floor, and you need to stay in room 1015, being the most haunted room due to this Effie situation. Well, some of the floors were being renovated, so I was placed on the 9th floor. And again, I know nothing of the actual story of Frederick, the general manager that killed himself on the 9th floor. So I do chat, of course, when I check in with the clerk. We talk about all this stuff, and everybody that worked there was super great. So, and they were pretty young, but they did not have any experience. There were like 2, but one clerk did give me the whole situation of paperwork. So it was like a whole history of papers on the hotel, and evidently when people come to the hotel that aren't even staying there, like they'll give them kind of like a do your own tour of the hotel, like with stuff. So again, that was really cool. I was like, yay. And he was like, yeah, I can print this out. And I was like, cool. So again, this paperwork, which was like, I want to say 7 pages long, 0.00 mention of the suicide of Frederick on the 9th floor, by the way. So other thing going on there in the hotel that was funny to me was it was covered with people. Like there were people everywhere. I think I came in on a Monday. I didn't leave till Wednesday. Came in on a Monday. People everywhere. They were wearing their little lanyards and their little matching shirts. They were all with the company Brunswick, like the bowling alley company. And they were everywhere. Like my whole stay, they were everywhere. So they were having a huge convention. And this place, yeah, it's set up nicely for that. So I head up to my room, which I'll post those pictures too. The room, I got like just a standard double 2 queens. It was absolutely amazing. And this is a 4-star hotel. The bathroom was gorgeous. Love the bathroom, love the room, had all the, amenities that I need, people like. It was awesome. I like a nice hotel, and it met all of that for me. So absolutely fantastic in that room. And newly rented. It looked fresh. Like I will say the 9th floor was fresh, and I'll get into it, but they had been in renovations, definite renovations. So I'm there in Oklahoma City to really visit with my friend Lynn. So she comes to the hotel for a bit, and then we go have an amazing meal. I'm going to do a plug for the Mahogany Prime Steakhouse downtown. So there's actually two locations. We went to the one downtown because it was literally like around the block from the Skirvin. It was recommended by one of my listener friends, Crystal. So shout out to Crystal. The meal was so good. I will post again these pictures from March. So after that, we come back and explore the hotel a little bit. We go to all the floors. We go to the 14th floor. It's beautiful. We look at the conference rooms. And again, this place is huge, and there's like ballrooms and conference rooms just everywhere. And evidently there were like 500 Brunswick workers all over this place, I'm sure. But this place was huge. Like you could hold, we go to a lot of places for dance. This place would have accommodated a whole like dance convention or dance competition. Like it was absolutely huge. It was awesome. So anyway, I was shocked by the fact that the Brunswick people didn't bring a whole bowling alley with them. They had room anyway, but that was fun. So anyway, it's amazing. I go to sleep. I'm tired. Like I had driven in that day, like had a big day. It's late. Of course I'm by myself. I sleep with the TV on. That's what I do. So I'm in the bed, like there's two beds. I'm in the bed closest to the wall, but then I'm sleeping on the side closest to the middle. Okay. And I fall asleep, and sometime, I want to say it was around like 1 o'clock. I am a light sleeper. I'm awakened, and it very much feels like someone's sitting or in bed with me. Like it feels like someone got in bed with me. Like there was a pressure, there was like a presence and a pressure. Like I don't remember feeling like any covers move. Like I always travel with like a blanket. I get cold. So like I was under the sheet, the comforter, the blanket. I don't remember feeling like a blanket moved from me or whatever, but there was that feeling like someone was in bed with me. And and yeah, so I am like wide awake now. It's 1 a.m. I'm 100,000% freaked out. I get up, I turn on all the lights, I'm looking around, my heart's kind of racing. I'm like, and then I'm just trying to calm down. I'm like, this is probably just because of that story. Like, it was very unsettling. Like, and I am very awake. So I literally have to watch TV for a while. Like, I just watch TV. I just put on something lighthearted, and I don't fall asleep until like 3. So I am up for a couple hours from this incident. And I was exhausted. I probably didn't even go to bed until 11:30 or so, maybe later. But anywho, of course, I share what happens with me to Daryl on the phone the next day, and then my friend Lynn's, and then probably everyone at the Skirvin. So anyway, I'm out of the hotel like all day. I'm with her. I'm running around. I don't even get back to the hotel till like 9. And so I do decide, since it's my last night, I want to explore it all. So I go to like every single floor. I go into the floor and spaces that I'm not supposed to. And again, it's under construction. There were signs that said like, construction, don't pass. I did. So the 7th floor, the whole 7th floor and the whole 10th floor were under construction. So I went all through that. I went back up to the 14th floor, and there was some more remodeling kind of at the other end, like I don't know, if you're coming up the stairwell, I went to the right. And so they had all of these conference rooms that they were remodeling. And that's when I really like got in to see like the creepy Bacchus moldings. And again, I'll post like really creepy stuff. So while I'm wandering around, I do run into a security guard, and we chat, and I ask him if he's had anything happen to him. So he does tell me that, not that night, but another night he was patrolling on some of the floors that were being remodeled, just like I did. But he said no one was up there with him. No one was there. And he thought someone was pranking him because the lights were turning on and off, and then doors were opening and closing, like doors like that he had inspected being closed. Now they're open, vice versa. So he just thought someone was pranking him. And he did, afterwards, he walked around and made sure that he was completely alone. And he was like, yeah, he couldn't explain this situation. He also told me that guests had told him, especially men, that they would feel like someone was hugging them from behind. So, yeah. So evidently people would feel people, sit on the bed, and then they would feel people like a hug from behind, which would totally freak you out. So this will lead into Effie. I will premise there is zero historical knowledge or anything to back up this story. I don't believe the story of Effie's true, but it's fun. So the legend of Effie goes by staff. It's not written down anywhere. It was not written down in any of the paperwork, again, that the Skirvin gave me. So the Skirvin does not tout this story of Effie as being true at all, or even a legend. So they don't, but evidently the staff will tell you about it. Yes. So evidently it said that Bill had an affair with a maid. By the way, we all know now that he was widowed when he built the place. So he had an affair, allegedly, and people, when they tell the story, they act like he had an affair, like he was cheating on his wife and he was a womanizer, so to speak. This is what's said about him. So Effie is a maid in the hotel, and allegedly he gets Effie pregnant, and then he locks her on the 10th floor in that room 1015. Like, he locks her up. He's embarrassed, and he doesn't want to anyone to know about this baby. Yeah. So again, yeah. And this is allegedly, no, and it says the 10th floor is the top floor. So that means that would be before 1928, because we also know about the addition. So according to the legend, Effie had the baby, I guess, in the hotel, but she was still locked away. And so she was so distraught, she went crazy and took her baby in her arms and jumped out of her window, and they die. And now male guests will experience Effie trying to seduce them. And they will experience a figure coming into their bathroom while they're showering. And also with the hugging of the men from behind, evidently that is notated as being Effie. Additionally, people that stay on the 10th floor will experience hearing a baby crying as well when there's like 0 children on the floor. So this is the whole story of Effie. Now, evidently, legend said that Bill, and this was according to his family, they said that he did have a romance with the bookkeeper lady. Remember her that had helped in the investigation into Frederick's death? Like, her name is Mabel Luddy, but Mabel outlived Bill quite a bit. So none of that story was true. For one thing, Bill was not married. He couldn't have an affair on anyone because he was widowed. So the question for me is, who made it up? Like, was it made up before 1987? And then, how did it transpass into the current, into 2007 plus? Or is it just a new story that came up since 2007? So that is a big mystery. So if you really know, let me know. Leave a comment. Like, if you have family that actually worked for the Skirvin way back, I would love to know. Like, before 1987, was there any reference to Effie? Love to know. Okay. So on top of the pilots and men being hugged and babies' cries at night, so way back in 2008, Oklahoma City, they do get a professional basketball team named the Thunder. And while I was there was a basketball game going on. I believe it was that Monday night, because when me and Lindsay went to eat, I think they were watching the game, and we saw several people kind of coming and going. So the arena is very close to the Skirvin. So the Thunder comes, so players from opposing teams all around the country would come to Oklahoma City, and it's downtown, so the Skirvin was the place for them to be put up in the hotel to stay. Now, evidently, around 2010, players began having experiences and then sharing their experiences on Twitter and such. So then it kind of caught word And even allegedly, people now state that the NBA has banned players from staying at Skirvin, which is not true, by the way. Is not true. So here's the deal. In 2010, so it said that Taj Gibson said that, and he was a professional basketball player. He said that his bathroom door, and this happened in 2010, his bathroom door slammed shut in the middle of the night. That happened in 2010. He told people about it. Yes. In 2012, Jordan Hamilton stated in a tweet that the Skirvin really creeped him out. So that was tweeted when he was on the road, okay? Now, in 2013, a Wesley Johnson of the Phoenix Sun, he stayed at the hotel, and in the night, he said that his bathroom door would open and close all night, and when he woke up the next day, his bathtub was full of water, and he swore he didn't leave on the water, didn't leave water in there. So that happened in 2013. He tells people, I mean, these are in interviews, guys. In 2014, Jeff Ayers stated the keys to his room wouldn't work. So when he got to his room, his keys wouldn't work. And he could hear on the other side of the door, it wasn't like a baby crying, but making noises. And this was said to be on the 10th floor. Another incident said that an Eddie Curry was on the 10th floor. This was when he was in town playing for the Knicks. He only got 2 hours sleep and went and slept in Nate Robinson's room, another player. They blamed their loss to the Thunder on the ghost. So this is becoming like a thing, and these guys are like superstitious, and they're like, and we're losing on the road. So now it's like this thing where the hotel is at fault, so to speak, quote unquote. So Derrick Rose, in an interview or a tweet, said he was scared, so he went to sleep in James Johnson's room. So he would not sleep in his room by himself. I mean, these are grown men, by the way. I mean, I stayed in my room after my incident. But again, had I had a whole ball team and friends to go sleep in their room, I'll be honest, I probably would have. I would have been like, yeah, I'm out of here. So, anywho. So now a Kyrie Irving story. So this was in 2016. It's kind of in the same realm with the other guys, but it's a little bit different. So he said he had to miss part of his game because of bedbug incident. And evidently this bedbug incident happened to another player. The health department came in looking into this and took care of it, so to speak. I never saw any type, and when I say bedbugs, like he described bugs. I'm glad I did not see anything like that. I'm not a bug person. I do not do bugs. So no bugs. But it is said by several YouTubers, and I'm going to link these videos, that evidently the Thunder hardly ever lose if their opponents sleep at the Skirvin. So this is the going rumor. And the joke is that Effie is the 6th player of the Oklahoma City Thunder. So they're saying that Effie, a fictional ghost, is to contribute to the losses of other opponents when they go against the Thunder. Yes, I'm being serious. So the question is the Skirvin haunted? I mean, people see all sorts of things. They see black figures. I had an experience myself in one night. So I'm going to say there's definitely something going on at the Skirvin. Obviously, I literally did experience it for myself. Other people have the NBA. However, is it Effie? No. Effie is a very fun story. I think it's even more fun that Effie is contributed to having anything to do with the NBA, abilities and then playing the Thunder. I think that's awesome. That is just fun. Now I want to go to a Thunder game and probably stay there again. I definitely would stay there again. But yeah, so definitely not Effie, but I will say, was the Effie story something from before 1987? That is my big question. So we do know of Frederick's death in the hotel. The hotel is old. I mean, it's old. It was built in, it started construction in 1909. It was built in 1911. I'm sure there were a lot of other deaths, maybe a lot more natural, and such. I didn't see anything else derived from it, but, Who knows? So, is Frederick the one hugging the travelers? Did Frederick crawl in bed with me? Why is it Effie? Why is it always a woman scorned and throwing herself off of a building or out of a building? I don't understand. Anyway, maybe it's Frederick and everybody just wants to say it's Effie. Regardless of if you believe in ghosts or not, here's the deal. Stay at the Skirvin, experience it yourself. It is absolutely beautiful and historic, and just have fun. And maybe you won't have someone get in bed with you. Or maybe you won't hear crying babies. Or maybe you won't have your bathtub full of water or slamming of doors going on like the NBA players. And maybe you won't lose your game. No. It's just fun. It's just a really awesome place to stay. So let me know what you think of this episode. Leave me a comment, especially if you happen to know anything about the Evie story. Message me. And this was just a fun episode. And love you guys. And this episode, you will hear this on Monday, whatever the 28th. I will have the Billy Joe Holder Part 2 coming May 1st. So please connect, listen, follow, do all the things. Love you guys. Bye.